Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and I almost forgot to do one of my favorite staple videos for the month, which is upcoming book releases. So this video is going to be all about kind of the 6 books that I found the most interesting that are going to be released during this month of October. I have 3 history books and then 3 science books, and some of them kind of go pretty well with the science reading challenge that I'm hosting, but let's just go ahead and get right into it. So the first one is Dan Jones released a medieval history. He's probably the most prominent popular medieval historian writing books right now, and it's Henry V, The Astonishing Triumph of England's Greatest Warrior King. One of my favorite books, by him was Summer of Blood, which is one of his really early ones. This is all about the peasants' revolt, and I just thoroughly enjoyed that way long ago. But he had Powers and Thrones come out a couple years ago that I need to get to, and it's like a 1,000-page massive doorstopper, just kind of as a general history of the Middle Ages. But this one obviously is all about Henry V, who reigned during the early 1400s. He's probably most famous for being the victor at the Battle of Agincourt. A very famous English victory over the French during the 100 Years' War. Shakespeare wrote a bunch of plays kind of based around Henry V and everything. So I think he is fairly prominent. I've never read a biography of him. I've read stuff where the 100 Years' War is, obviously talked about and included in everything, so you hear about Henry V. But like I said, I've never actually read anything specifically on him. In general, a lot of the English monarchy, I haven't read too many biographies of. I think I've done John Lackland. I think that's probably it, and one book maybe on Alfred the Great way back in college and everything. But yeah, so I think this might be one I do pick up, just because, like I said, I think I've read 3 books by Dan Jones so far. Read his one on the Crusades and the one on the Templars. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think he's just got a great style. So definitely check that out if you're into medieval history. Next up is one that I'm out of this list. This is probably the one I'm most interested in, and it's The Greatest Nobodies of History, Minor Characters from Major Moments by Adrian Bliss. And just the premise and topic of this book is just awesome. It's like something like I wish, if I was a writer, this would be something I'd want to write about. And this is all about, so instead of, Henry V, for example, his, probably, someone behind the scenes of his court that's, probably mentioned every now and then, but, no one talks about, no one knows his name and everything like that, even if it has come down to us, no one cares about per se. But, just had a really important role in all kinds of things. So, and it covers, the whole gamut of history from what I'm understanding from just, the little blurbs and everything. But I find it's the footnotes. All the interesting stuff is in the footnotes. It's all in, kind of the endnotes and everything. And I just find, books like these just do a really good job kind of bringing all these, larger than life moments and characters and people from the past and everything, and bringing it down to earth. So, these are real people. These were real events with just different things kind of going on. And like I said, it's gonna be all these kind of side characters that probably just never got their moment in the sun that probably showed up. So like I said, I'm really looking forward to getting to this one at some point. And then one more history-ish book, we have Explorers, A New History by Matthew Lockwood. And I've read a couple books on exploration and travel and this sort of thing, but this one seems to be, has a very different slant. So it's not necessarily exploring areas for the first time, being the discoverers of a location or what have you. This is exploring things from different cultures, exploring things from different angles, if that makes sense. Just for example, Rasul Gawan has a highlight in the book, and he was a Himalayan guide for during kind of the British Raj era in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Yeah, he was a guide that helped different people from Europe and stuff traverse northern India and the Himalayan region and everything, which just sounds really cool. I wrote down David Dorr, who was a former slave, grew up in New Orleans and stuff, and during the 1800s he just went on after he got his freedom, He went on like a grand tour of Europe, just kind of like what the the rich aristocracy in Europe and in the United States kind of like did to become cultured and that sort of thing. So it's going to be kind of a different view of the grand tour from a former slave's perspective. So there's a lot of like exploration and things, but like I said, just from like kind of slightly different angles and like kind of what you'd think of. I don't know, it just sounded really great to me like after reading the premise and everything, so that's why I added it to the list. Now we have 3 science books, and this first one fits perfectly for my science reading challenge for October, which is kind of focusing, I guess, on astronomy and physics if you want to, but just reading science in general is the way to go for sure. But we have Pillars of Creation, How the James Webb Telescope Unlocked the Secrets of the Cosmos by Richard Perrick. And this is all about, I assume is about like kind of the construction and development and like kind of launching the James Webb Large Telescope into orbit. It is the biggest telescope in outer space at this moment. It's sort of the replacement to the Hubble Space Telescope. And I remember growing up, in the 90s and 2000s, and like the Hubble telescope was always like kind of the big one that was always talked about and everything. So it's just going to be interesting reading about how this one, the James Webb one, is going to be. It's just bigger, better, stronger, essentially, than the Hubble one. It's based mostly on infrared telescope. Infrared optics. I don't know exactly what even the terminology is there. To do kind of the things that it does to take photos and whatnot, but apparently it can see farther and in more clarity and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, it'll be kind of interesting to learn about this piece of technology. And James Webb, it's named after James Webb, who was the director of NASA during the 60s right up until I think he retired like literally right before the moon landings, but I think there was like 8 or 9 years he was kind of a director of NASA, and he was kind of one that really pushed for NASA. It's not just going to be about putting people in space per se and people on the moon. It's going to be all about like doing like real science out there, gaining information and testing different theories and observations, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's kind of a good blend of kind of be like the cosmology, like the technology, astronomy, everything like that. I'm always interested in reading about like laboratory work on like what actual techniques and methods do these scientists use to get the information we have, like whether it's geology and like fossils and rocks and everything, or like doing ocean samples and stuff like that. So this one sounded really cool for what I'm interested in. Next up we have Playing Possum, How Animals Understand Death by Susanna Monso, and this just looks like a really good niche topic related to like zoology and nature and that sort of thing. And it's all about how different animals, from the little blurbs I was able to read, chimpanzees are talked about, ants, whales, I think there's a few others too, and how they kind of understand in different degrees, in different ways, how they understand mortality of their own kind as well as others. I just think that's interesting. I feel like the pendulum has started to shift away from there was a big movement where we can't anthropomorphize anything related to animals, and now that pendulum has started to shift. So now that we can kind of break down like some of those barriers that we had kind of previously set up and realize, a lot of these different organisms have they're much more cognizant than we kind of gave them credit for, but we were just like too unwilling to let them be like, animals never play, for example, right? But they clearly do in like some circumstances and stuff. And this is going to be kind of like looking at that just through the lens of like death and mortality and everything. And I've read little vignettes of a couple of different things. For example, with the whale, there was I can't remember if it was an orca whale or a different species, but carried its dead calf for like a couple weeks or whatever in the water and everything, stuff like that. So I feel like I'm gonna learn a lot, and I just love niche nature books. I feel like it's just like the perfect medium for like the kind of those just kind of interesting, like weird topics, if that makes any sense. And then lastly, we have The Insect Epiphany, How Our Six-Legged Allies Shape Human Culture. And I'm gonna put his name up there too, because unfortunately I forgot to write down his name for whatever reason. Or it could be her, I can't even remember. This one's going to be interesting in that, obviously, like a lot of books dealing with insects talk about how insects are important to our ecology. They break down different matter into like smaller portions and everything like that, like, you know, nutrient recycling, all that kind of things, you know, and obviously are like a base of the food chain for bigger organisms. But this book deals with that, but also how more on how human cultures and human civilizations have like kind of had in relationships with different insects, how we've borrowed from them, different ways like we utilize them. For example, like food, we've studied like architecture and things like from certain insects, stuff like that. I think it's going to be interesting. Like there's tons of photos and illustrations throughout the book, and just like when I was doing like kind of reading the sample, like, you know, there's a bunch of different Bronze Age civilizations in Mesopotamia and their kind of relationships with different insects, kind of like what they learned from them and took from them and everything like that. So I just found that like really fascinating, like kind of like on the cuneiform and stuff like that. So yeah, I just found, I don't know, like I said, the interrelatedness and how like other cultures have utilized, I guess, different aspects of insect life. I think that's kind of a cool topic for a book as well. And all these are coming out here in this month of October 24. So let me know if you're interested in reading any of these. I think all these ones all sound great. Wish I could kind of just toss half my TBR away so I could go get these and stuff too. But let me know if you know of any good books that are coming out in the near future, whether it's October or, you know, in the next couple of months and stuff. I'm always on the lookout for kind of cool releases and things like that. But whether you're reading an October release or not, always remember, read victoriously.